This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Catherine Andrews.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live from the Heartland on Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception. We are simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. I'm your host, Patrick.
And I'm Catherine. Glad to be here. Hello, everybody in the chat room.
We are very excited today to welcome our new sponsor, Wandering Star Jewelry. We are very happy to have them. We saw them at a show some time back. They have an amazing selection of jewelry that is very unique. One particular necklace features stones that represent all of the planets in our solar system, and it is sold at the Smithsonian Institution. I think that's really cool. So we will have more information about them next week, but until then, you can check them out at wanderingstarjewelry.com. Maybe they have just what you need to surprise that special someone.
Yes, it is the most awesome jewelry. If you are into astrology, you will love it. And we're going to have the owner of the company on next week as our guest. So stay tuned. We've got a great show coming up for everybody today. Some interesting things going on in the news that we're going to share about our freedom of speech and the internet. What's going on, Patrick?
Well, today's topic is the freedom of speech. Something troubling is developing that I feel like I need to bring our attention to. It could be threatening our basic rights as citizens of the United States to have freedom to communicate what we want and to communicate what we believe in. Also related to that is vaccine safety, and that's one area where this is being shown, but there's a lot of areas where I'm actually seeing this. Just to remind you, in case you forget from your civics class, our First Amendment basically states Congress shall not make a law respecting or establishing any religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So basically what that means is that we have the right to express ourselves. The problem is that there's this whole issue of net neutrality that I've been hearing a lot about since the first of the year. Now, neutrality, basically, there's a lot of people who are trying to put forth the idea that the internet is a vital highway for communication, so it needs to be kept neutral for everybody to speak freely.
And so meaning that no matter what you're wanting to put out on the internet, that we all have equal right to put up our websites and put out any information that we want. And likewise, no website is going to get more exposure than another. It's neutral.
Now, one problem that we're coming up against is there's this whole idea of fake news that's being put out there. People are being very concerned about it. They're spreading a lot of fear that there's this fake information. Now, fake news is nothing new. It's just a new term for it. Misinformation has been around as long as communication has been around. So this isn't something new. The big problem here is that there were recent regulations. The FCC recently responded and said that companies like Facebook and Google and the major players on the internet have the right to control the information that they send out. But this is not just the information superhighway. The internet is the entire interstate system of information in this country. And if you start regulating the internet, basically you are controlling the communication of information. And when you control the communication of information, you start controlling the direction that things go in this country. That's a big problem.
Sounding a little like communism to me here, controlling the information that comes out.
Well, yes, I've never been really a conspiracy theorist, and I don't normally get really bent out of shape about that because I know that we can control our mind. I know that we can always make sure that we have a safe place to be. We can create the kind of life that we want. However, we also need to be vigilant. So we need to be aware of things that are coming in to change that, and we need to make changes in that. We need to hold our attention focused. So with this net neutrality, one big problem is that these, like for example, there was an article in Forbes magazine that said that net neutrality is a non First Amendment issue. It's a red herring. Basically, they're saying it doesn't apply because the First Amendment applies to the state. That the First Amendment states Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment. Now, there has been many cases where private property owners, for example, there was a shopping mall where there was a person who wanted to distribute anti-war brochures in the shopping mall, and the mall's right to keep him out of the mall was upheld because it was private property. So the problem is that they are using that defense because Facebook and Google and a lot of these other internet platforms are companies, and they're saying the companies have the right to police the information that is on them. But the problem is that these companies now have such a large share on the internet. They have actually become monopolies on information. And so they are actually having groups of people, these small groups, let's say there's 100 people, who are deciding exactly what it is that you are going to listen to on their network. Let me read you a little excerpt from the Facebook community standards here. Now, if you want to check this out for yourself, it's section 4 under integrity and authenticity. And then it's subsection 19, which is fake news. Now, they say that there is a fine line between false news and satire or opinion, but what they're saying they're doing is they do not remove false news from Facebook, but instead they significantly reduce its distribution by showing it lower in the newsfeed. So essentially what they're saying is if their little team of fake news police decide that what you are saying does not agree with their official story of the truth, then they are going to bury your story so far down into your newsfeed that your own mother is probably going to have a hard time finding it. So this is essentially censorship, what they're doing. We need to make sure that we are allowed to find what we want when we want on the internet.
That's really interesting. I did want to bring up an actual case. This is a site which is absolutely fabulous called the NVIC, National Vaccine Information Center.org. It's got tons of resources about what's going on in the vaccine world, what are they putting in vaccines. It also shows what states are trying to pass laws to remove exemptions from vaccines and so forth. Anyway, just a fabulous site. It's run by Barbara Lowe Fisher. So she had several pictures and things on Pinterest about, dangers of vaccines and things like that. Well, recently, she was told by Pinterest that all her pictures, her pins would be taken down, that they did not want to put out dangerous or unsafe material. And so it's happening. The second thing that NVIC has noticed is that their traffic has increased significantly over the past year or so. And that would relate to what Patrick was just saying, where Facebook, for example, is moving feed down low that they don't want people to see. So the NVIC, National Vaccine Information Center, obviously that's what's happening to them, is they're being put down so low on the search engines that people aren't finding it. And it's just an amazing resource. So that's one thing that's going on.
I found that too, and actually we hadn't really talked about this a lot before the last couple of weeks, but the first place that I started seeing this was on the internet when I was actually working on developing our Facebook business page for Spirit's Journey so that you would all have a place to go and we'd have a place to share ideas and community. And so there were some things in there. Facebook, of course, as you may know if you've been working with that, it always changes. So I was having to look up new things to see what it was that I wanted to do. And I was finding all of these posts as I was Googling for help of people who were complaining that their accounts were shut down. Now, I've been hearing this not only on Facebook, but also on Pinterest, on Twitter. So this is something that is rapidly developing and that we need to be very careful of. And so they are not just um, always putting down in the news feeds how easy it is to search for your information. Sometimes they are actually canceling people's accounts. I've seen many Google responses where people were questioning, why was my account canceled? I got this report that I violated, these community standards. That was one of them that I was mentioning earlier regarding fake news. And so these are people who are deciding for us what we should hear and what we should find out about. And then they are taking steps to make it extremely difficult for us to find the information that we want and that we need. Now, what's next? For example, this is a Spirit's Journey. We talk about astrology, we talk about numerology, we talk about spiritual things. So then we're going to have somebody in this little group of people, this little group of censors who are sitting in some room somewhere and deciding, well, astrology isn't real. We don't believe in that. So therefore, we are going to delete your account because you're talking about astrology, or we're going to delete your account because you're talking about numerology. So this is where this is headed. We need to take action now. And I'm usually not one to raise the alarm about things because I generally trust in our system. I don't believe that any one president, for example, could do that much damage in 4 or 8 years. But when Congress is behind something like this was the FCC that rolled this back. And people have been fighting to defend net neutrality for some time. But the argument goes that since these are corporations, they are not under First Amendment protections, that we do not have the right for protection. My personal belief is if any one of those outlets reaches a following of, let's say, 1 million people or more, then they should be declared public domain, because this kind of information and communication is becoming essential as our way of life. And so the internet needs to be recognized and respected as a vital form of information. And so our rights to be able to have our information out there need to be protected. Now, of course, it's your choice whether or not you want to come to our website to read it or somebody else's website talking about something. It's your choice what you want to go see, but it needs to be freely available and not squashed. That's what's actually happening right now.
Well, and let's bring in some of the metaphysics. Now, one of the things that helps us decide what we want, whether it's food, whether it's a book, whatever, is our intuition. So I don't want some person on this little group telling me what I can and can't read or what's good for me. Come on, we've all got some basic intuition. And the internet and all the news that we're bombarded with every day is just another opportunity for us to tune in to our intuition and say, is this something that's productive for me or is it not? One of the things that we're teaching to get by in this world is intuition. Now, I totally believe that in all our school systems and everywhere, that intuition should be one of the pillars that we're teaching kids. Unfortunately, it's not really happening in the majority of schools, but we can do that in our homes. And so if we are taught to develop our intuition, it doesn't matter what anybody puts out there. My intuition, I'm going to trust that it's going to steer me in the direction where I need to go. We can use our basic, just gut instinct. Geez, is this a website that's about terrorism? Maybe I shouldn't go there. And let me decide where my intuition needs to lead me rather than somebody else.
Now, I do want to mention, too, that a lot of these sites that I've been finding as I've been Googling, now these aren't people promoting terrorism or hate crimes or anything like that, even though groups like the Ku Klux Klan have been defended over and over again for their right to freedom of speech in this country. As much as I disagree with everything that they stand for, their rights to free speech have been defended over and over again. The people that I'm seeing on the internet who are saying their accounts have been frozen or blocked or shut down, they are not talking about drastic things that you might consider a national threat or something like that. These are people just like you and me. Some of them may believe very similar things that we do, but it's just that there is this very small group of people who are out there deciding what gets out there and what doesn't, and then they're using this fake news platform and tool that they have now as a way of squashing any beliefs, any thoughts that they disagree with.
So let's talk about one of these groups that you all can Google. It's called NewsGuard Technology. Now, this is a group, it's a very interesting website, but they talk about how they have this wonderful group of unbiased reporters. Now, really, non-political, unbiased group of reporters on this site called NewsGuard Technology, and they are out there policing these websites, and they're going to give websites a rating. For example, if you get a red rating, that means that what you're putting out there is false. You get a green rating, that means, hey, good, you're putting truthful information out there. So I suggest if you want to find out more about this, go ahead and Google NewsGuard Technology, see who's behind it. So you know that pretty soon they could be rating all websites. They are supposedly also partnering with Google, Microsoft, schools, etc., to supposedly save us from false information.
So I would actually like to put out a call to action. I believe that what we need to do is to make our voices heard, that we want to protect our First Amendment rights. And even if there is stuff being put out there that you don't agree with, it's your choice whether or not to go to that site. If you see a link that comes up and it's something you don't agree with, don't click on it. Or if you click on it and it turns out to be something other than what you expected, click off of it. That is how we vote for what we believe in. That's how we patrol for things that we think might be harmful for us. But censoring other people is just not the right way to go about it. So we need to let our congressmen know. We need to let our senators know. Contact your representatives at the state level, at the national level. And I really believe we need to take action on this now before it goes too far, because what could happen next is that anyone who talks out against net neutrality could actually be censored. And by that point, it's going to be much more difficult to take action. So we need to take action now. We need to let them know we know about the argument that this does not apply because Facebook and Google are corporations, but we need to let them know that these organizations need to be declared public domain because they become too integrated into society, not just in our country, but worldwide.
So one thing that can help us is to know who is in favor of this net neutrality. What senators do we need to contact? Who's behind this policing of the internet? And so one senator that we want to bring up is Senator Pan of California. He was just reelected again in California. So he, of course, was the author of the bill to remove all exemptions from vaccines. So whether you had a medical issue, whatever, he was removing your ability to be exempt from vaccinations in order to go to public schools. Now his next goal is this whole fake news thing, where if you live in the state of California and you put up a website with information that goes against the official story, he wants to be able to persecute that person and take their website down. That's Senator Pan. This is what he's up to. So that's definitely somebody that you would want to keep your eye on, because he is definitely behind a lot of this desire to have people policing and pointing out what is fake news.
Now, Senator Pan is one example. He's a state senator in California, but there are also movements nationally. So there are senators and representatives who are in favor of net neutrality. There are also those who oppose it. So we just need to learn which side they fall on this issue. But I really believe that our right to free choice is an essential requirement and right for spiritual beings. We need to be able to choose our own way so that we can learn from our successes as well as our mistakes and learn and grow as spiritual beings. The right to free choice is key. So I eat as much organic food as I can get a hold of. Obviously, when we're eating out, there's no guarantee you're going to get organic food, but that's my right to choose what I put into my body. And when I vote with my dollars, I am supporting the companies who are giving me what I want, and they will give me more of that. I've seen more of that increasing over the years as more and more people wake up to the idea of eating healthy, of getting away from all the processed foods, the artificial colors, the artificial flavors, the preservatives, and eating more whole, healthy foods. Now, I believe you have the right to get a vaccine if you want to. I also will defend your right not to vaccinate if that is your choice. It comes down to your right to choose what you put in your body. I believe our right to our body and treating our body the way that we choose is an essential right that we have that is even more innate than the right to free speech. I believe that is a spiritual right that we have to choose what we put into our bodies.
So metaphysically, it's kind of interesting because sometimes when we find something out there that's bad, a bad group, a bad religious sect, whatever it is, some of us have the idea that, well, we need to go and destroy that. It's bad. Or there's some weeds out there. We need to destroy it. So metaphysically, though, the only reason that something will exist in the physical world is if there is a need for it to be there. So, for example, communism. We may not believe in it. We may not think it's right to have a society where people don't have basic voting rights and so forth. However, if a country exists that's communist, there is a reason for it to be in existence. There are people or souls who are desiring that kind of existence. So rather than us saying, oh my gosh, we have to go out there and destroy this communist country, I can take a little broader perspective and say, well, when there is no longer a need for souls to experience what it's like to live in a country where they don't have basic rights, then communism will fall everywhere. So, just like an animal, they say, oh my gosh, this animal is going to be extinct. Well, I really believe that the power of nature is strong enough that if there is still a purpose for that particular animal, it will find a way to survive and thrive. So it kind of, takes the pressure off of us that, we aren't, all so powerful. There's this universe that's so powerful and many mysteries beyond what we can imagine. So I trust that what is out there, whether it's a website that's not good or, a group that's harmful for people, it's existing because souls are needing that. We live in a vibrational universe. And so if there's souls vibrating that want a particular situation, they're going to be drawn to it. And that situation is being held up by the beliefs of those people that want it. And as soon as all those souls no longer have that desire for a particular experience, then if it's talking about a communist government, that government is going to fall. And we've seen it happen over and over again. But what happens is if we go in there and say, wow, I don't believe this should exist, we're going to destroy it, guess what happens? It just pops up somewhere else in the world. Another communist government forms, for example. So that helps me when I look out there at this whole net neutrality and say, oh, we have to destroy all these bad websites. If nobody wants them and there's no interest, those websites are going to fall anyway. And the person's going to say, well, I guess no one's interested in my whatever, and go on.
Well, I do agree with that. And we have, over the years in my lifetime, seen tremendous changes. The Soviet Union completely collapsed, for example. And there's been great changes in China. I mean, Tiananmen Square, even though people might look at that as a failure, that was 1 million youth in China supporting the right to make a choice and to have freedom in their lives. And so even though that particular demonstration was broken up, you cannot break the spirit of those people. So all of that energy just went underground. But since then, you have seen tremendous changes in China, even where this communist government has allowed people to own their businesses once again, because they looked at Hong Kong, for an example, because Hong Kong's economy was so strong compared to theirs. They knew they had to make changes economically, so they allowed people to start owning their businesses again. We saw the breakup of the Soviet Union. When I was growing up, I never thought I would see that within my lifetime. And yet the Berlin Wall came down. And after that wall came down, everything just started collapsing and crumbling around it. So it is very true that when those experiences are no longer needed for those people, that it will change. Now, I have a degree in physics and biology, so bacteria is a really good example of that. That a lot of people consider bacteria icky, and so they want to get rid of it. Now we have all these antibacterial soaps and things like that kill bacteria. But one of the things that we studied, we looked at different studies that showed how most of our bacteria, over 99% of the bacteria that is in our environment, is actually either neutral or beneficial to us. And what they found was these people who were getting these flesh-eating diseases on their skin and things like that, there's actually beneficial bacteria that take up all the space on your skin, so that the very few harmful bacteria that are out there can't really get a good foothold on your skin. They found that these antibacterial soaps that are being used so frequently are actually creating a problem. They're creating these bacteria that are very strong and actually can start to attack the body. And so the same thing's happening in hospitals, that the antiseptics are creating these superbugs in these hospitals because you can't kill 100% of them. So the very few that are left actually are more resistant to that down the road. So that's a simple factor in nature that we see over and over again. Most of the bacteria, like I said, are beneficial. So this isn't a harmful universe, it's a beneficial universe. Well, we are at the bottom of the hour, so we are getting ready to go out into our break, but we want to invite you back. This is Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio. See you on the other side.
See you in a few minutes.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
Welcome back to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Catherine.
And we are talking about preserving your freedom of speech and making sure that we can find the information that we are looking for on the internet, and how some of the current moves may be taking that away from us. I do want to say, I know sometimes I may come on strong because I'm passionate about this topic, but I do want to emphasize that my real intent is freedom of choice for all of us. So I definitely don't want you to take what I say on faith. I only want to invite you to investigate for yourself, find out what's going on, decide what's right for you, and to invite you to join my effort to communicate this to our representatives.
And I'm going to dive into a little bit of astrology to explain what's going on right now. So we have had the planet Pluto in Capricorn for several years now, and it will be continuing. So Capricorn is all about the status quo, structure, security, systems. So yes, it would rule corporations, government, and so forth. Now Pluto is the planet of destruction and reconstruction. Pluto's aim is to remove, annihilate what doesn't work, to replace it with something that will help our growth and improve our lives. So this is a very interesting combination and very interesting times that we live in with Pluto and Capricorn, because the whole basis of that status quo has been under attack and will continue to be. So whether we're talking about the internet, whether we're talking about vaccine safety, Pluto is there, and it is disrupting everything we thought was true. If you look at the structures, the status quo, Saturn wants things to stay the same. And Pluto's saying, no, it's time to ruffle some feathers, dig up some dirt. We need to destroy some things. So I'm really confident that Pluto is doing its work. And you Capricorns out there, if you have your sun sign in Capricorn, you can lead the way in this effort of changing, transforming what does not work in society with something that works. So Pluto's best advice, if you've got something going on in your chart with Pluto, is to just let go. Because if you try to hang on to something that's no longer working, life's going to get really difficult for you. So Pluto basically says that the best thing to do is to release and let go. So with Pluto, I would say, let's just kind of release, let go of these old systems that no longer work. Maybe this whole internet policing thing is going to bring up something good, but I do trust that if it is not good for us, that Pluto will do something to take it down. So on that note, I do want to talk a little about what's been going on in the news related to vaccines and the flu shot. Now we're getting into winter and everyone's up in arms about the flu. Okay, so true story, November 17th, Senator from New York, Jose Peralta, was big into the flu shot, had a clinic opening for the flu shot. On November 17th, he was there and he got his flu shot. Now, 5 days later, on November 21st, he died. Now, he's quoted as saying to his wife, he was complaining of headache, fever, pressure behind his ears. Now, those are the specific symptoms that are listed on the flu vaccine insert. Yes, you can develop a fever and a headache and feel pressure. So he was complaining to his wife that he just was not feeling right ever since he got the flu shot. He was a completely healthy 47-year-old man. Now, what the ultimate cause of death that was reported in the newspaper was SSS, sudden septic shock. Now, sepsis is caused by an immune system overreacting to an infection. Now, one of the purposes of a vaccine is to stimulate the immune system into reacting to whatever it's injecting. So I see some parallels there. Let's just use, the information and draw our own conclusions. Inflammation. So sepsis is caused by immune system overreacting to an infection, releasing chemicals that can trigger widespread inflammation. This inflammation can lead to organ damage, which is called septic shock. Now, one of the big things with vaccines is inflammation. They cause inflammation. Their purpose is to stimulate the immune system. And how exactly does it do that? Well, these little vaccines are filled with things called adjuvants. One of them, widely known, is mercury. Another name is thimerosal. The purpose of these is if you didn't have them in the vaccine, there wouldn't be a strong enough reaction to supposedly make these antibodies against whatever disease the vaccine is trying to prevent. So they put these adjuvants in to trick our body into overstimulating its immune system so that we react to it. So that is one news article. Definitely check out what was going on with Jose Peralta. Second, just saw an interview with a man, Shane Morgan, who is currently in the hospital. He is suffering from what he has all the symptom of is Guillain-Barré syndrome. He got his flu shot. His daughter was coming in with her baby and wanted everybody to get the flu shot so her baby would not be in danger. So they all went out and got their flu shot. Several days after that, Mr. Morgan was not feeling right. And he eventually called his wife one morning and said, "Take me to the emergency room. I can't feel my feet." So he's having a real tough time in the hospital. Paralysis. He was in coma part of the time. Pretty sure it's Guillain-Barré syndrome. And he did comment that years and years ago, he got a flu shot. And he got so sick after that, he vowed, probably would never do that again. And he did. So that's a little news article. Now, let's talk a little about, to inform you of what is in a flu shot. And I'm going to leave on a good note telling you some alternative things that you can do if you don't want to have the flu shot. Okay, so what's in a vaccine? Well, they have several things. One is a suspending fluid, which is sterile water, saline, or fluids containing protein. Then they have preservatives or stabilizers, for example, phenols, albumin, glycine. And then, of course, they have these adjuvants to help improve the vaccine effectiveness. You may also get in your vaccines chicken egg protein, basically the small amount of the culture material that was used to grow the virus or the bacteria. So, other preservatives and enhancements that could be in there are things like aluminum, antibiotics. Now, this is huge because we know that a lot of problem going on, like Patrick was mentioning with bacteria, is people are becoming resistant to all the different kinds of antibiotics. Well, interesting enough, antibiotics are added to some vaccines to prevent the growth of germs or bacteria during the production and storage of the vaccine. Although it does not contain penicillin, there are a lot of other antibiotics that are used. So how interesting that a lot of people are becoming antibiotic resistant at a young age. So not only are they getting it just from taking antibiotics, they're getting it in doses of vaccines. Now, egg protein is found in yellow fever and most of the influenza vaccines, obviously used preparing chicken eggs. Who knows what kind of health that chicken was in or what was in his egg, but do we really want that foreign DNA floating around our bodies? I sure don't. Now, here's the kicker. We all know what formaldehyde is, right? They preserve bodies in it, right? Formaldehyde. Well, guess what? You are getting a little of that in your vaccine. Why did they put it in there? Well, formaldehyde is actually used to inactivate bacterial compounds. It can kill unwanted viruses and bacteria that might contaminate the vaccine. Although they claim that most formaldehyde, most, not all, is removed from the vaccine before it's packaged. So you've got some things here soaked in formaldehyde. Next, I was shocked to learn that MSG is added to some vaccines. And I thought, wait, that's this food additive that makes me incredibly sick with headache and stomachache. It's horrible. What are they putting MSG in there for? Well, it's actually a stabilizer in a few vaccines to help the vaccine remain unchanged when it's exposed to things like heat or light. Thimerosal, a mercury-containing preservative that's added, of course, to vials that contain more than one dose to prevent contamination and growth of potentially harmful bacteria. Well, isn't thimerosal harmful? Well, of course it is. We know that mercury does not leave the body. Where does it go? It goes straight to the brain, goes in other parts of the body. It's different than the mercury that if you eat a piece of fish and they say, there's mercury out there, it's getting in your fish. Well, when you eat something, it's passing through the digestive system. It's not being directly injected into your bloodstream. It's completely different. So let's specifically talk about the flu shot, okay? So in addition to weakened or killed viruses, antigens, virus or bacteria, we could have things in that such as stabilizers, residual amounts of trace materials that were used during the manufacturing process, cell culture materials that were used to grow the vaccine antigens. And we talked about possible egg protein. One antibiotic that's commonly used to kill the bacteria in vaccines is neomycin, which is prescribed right and left as well to people. So if you go on the CDC website, so again, what Patrick said, anything we talk about on the show, we're going to give you our resources and tell you where we got this information. I'm getting this information directly from the CDC website, Center for Disease Control, cdc.org. You can look up the ingredients in the vaccine, and luckily they're still actually listing the ingredients. It's amazing that there's like 8 or 9 different influenza vaccines out there. So most of them have some common basic things, and of course, most of the names in those vaccines are difficult to pronounce, and we don't know the heck they are. Formaldehyde, sodium citrate dehydrate, sucrose, ovalbumin, thimerosal, squalene. You guys could go ahead and Google that. Squalene. It's really frightening to see that that's going into these vaccines. We've got lipids, amino acids. I couldn't even pronounce, so I'm not going to make a fool of myself on air and try to valent and quadrivalent. Now, canine kidney cell protein. Okay, so basically, yes, you're getting some foreign DNA in there, aren't you? Who knows what kind of health this Darby canine was in, and this kidney cell protein, who knows what was in that? Do they check the animals for their health before they use that? So those are some fun little ingredients that you all can look up. Now, one thing that I want to talk about is 1986, they created the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. Fabulous. Now, if vaccines aren't harmful and they don't cause damage, it's very interesting to note that since the creation of that in 1986, $4 billion in compensation has been awarded to people who have been vaccine injured. So, you guys can, again, look that up. And if you ever have any kind of reaction to a vaccine, I highly urge you to go to the Vaccine Adverse Advent Reporting System. It's called VAERS, VAERS. And you can go to that website and report an adverse reaction to any kind of vaccine you received. The more that people do that, the more that we will find out what is going on with vaccines. Now, if you have a child that goes to school, listen up. School districts across the United States have partnered with what's called Healthy Schools LLC of Jacksonville, Florida, to administer influenza vaccines to children in classrooms for the purpose of preventing absenteeism. Now, that means that your child is sitting in school and they're going to come in there with their needles and be giving kids the flu vaccine in school. Now, this was started by a Jacksonville Jaguar professional football player, Tony Baselli. And he recently has sold it to pediatric healthcare technology provider called CareDocs, CareDocs, CareDocs Inc. of New York, where Baselli is also the partner and president. So, what's going to be happening is it's going to be all electronic, and they're going to be managing the entire school-based vaccination program, from everything from seeking parental consent to setting up vaccine clinics on school properties. So some concerns that parents are going to be having, at least I know for sure, is informed consent. Now, what is that? Informed consent is what's supposed to be happening, where a doctor clearly tells you what are the side effects, what are the ingredients, tells you everything you need to know so that you can make an informed decision about your health needs. Now, I talk to people over and over again. Did your doctor tell you what was in that vaccine? Now, when my daughter was a baby and I took her in for just a general checkup, the doctor said, well, time for the vaccine. I said, oh, no. And I said, well, by the way, if you think my daughter should have the vaccine, could you tell me the ingredients? I don't know. Okay, these doctors want to inject our kids with this, and they cannot even list the ingredients from that vaccine. So, is that informed consent? No way. So is that going to be happening in schools when parents get this electronic thing? Oh, will you consent to your child having the flu shot? Are they going to be describing the ingredients, the possible side effects? Guillain-Barré syndrome is a side effect, fever, and so on and so forth. So, of course, if you cannot afford this flu shot, they're going to give it to your child at no cost. Of course, they'll be reimbursed with contracts with Medicaid and other insurance providers. So either way you look at it, it's a moneymaker.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to bring in here too, in terms of finding out more about the medications that we take, is that I found out years ago, and this was fascinating to me, that doctors are not actually experts on the medications. They're experts in the human body. So they are educated in terms of different medications that are available to them to treat certain conditions, but they don't know all of the side effects of the medication, nor do they know the interactions of the medications. So what I learned was that actually the pharmacist is the expert in chemical reactions. And so when you want to check out the interactions of different medications that you may be taking, you need to consult your pharmacist about the contraindications and how these are going to interact. Now, with that though, I personally always check the side effects myself so that I am making an informed decision before I take any medication. One example is just over this summer, we were going to be traveling for about 4 weeks, and I had a minor infection that I wasn't too concerned about, but I was a little bit concerned about leaving home, and if it had gotten worse being on the road for 4 weeks, that it might have been difficult to find care for that. And obviously could have been more expensive having to go out of our network for the insurance and all of that. So I went to my doctor. I just had it checked out. He said it wasn't a big deal, but that he did recommend taking an antibiotic. And it was just like a 5-day dose. It was not like a major antibiotic. But I came home and I read the possible side effects, and it was describing things like permanent nerve damage, and it had the warning signs. And this was just a normal antibiotic that people use all the time. And there was some chance that this antibiotic could have given me permanent nerve damage. Now, the problem is sometimes the symptoms come on and the damage has already been done. So I went ahead and took it, but it was my choice. And I went into it with my eyes wide open. So that's all we're really saying is that if we want to have the freedom of choice, I believe it's important to take the responsibility to investigate deeper, to ask the people who have the answers that we are seeking. In this case, it would be the pharmacist. And in the case of doctors regarding vaccinations, and Catherine was talking about vaccinations in schools, you know, I've heard so many stories of people talking about doctors assuring them, oh yeah, the vaccination is completely safe. And that just simply is not true. I mean, for example, we talked earlier about how the pharmaceutical companies have been granted immunity from the government for any mistakes that they make during vaccinations, and how a lot of times they push these out to market with what they call these quick trials, where they aren't really tested for safety, but the pharmaceutical companies claim they have to do this to be able to get the vaccines out to us in time. So they've been granted immunity. So the government basically handles all of the damage claims. And from what I understand of this process, it's very difficult to go through this process because it doesn't work like a normal court of law. And you can investigate that if you choose. But the main thing is there's been over $4 billion in damages paid out. So obviously, even with this very difficult system that has been put in place to recover damages with vaccines, there have been people who have been able to demonstrate enough evidence that their child or themselves were damaged by vaccines to the point of $4 billion being paid out. So that shows that people have been harmed by the vaccine. The phrase that they use is that it does more harm than good. And so that's what they keep going back on. So they actually recognize that people are going to be hurt by these. So when doctors say, oh yeah, these are completely safe, you have nothing to worry about, that just simply isn't true. So we need to look, I believe, to the side effects and to go into this. And if you want to make that decision, that's fine. You know, I am in favor of freedom of choice, but I also want to be able to make an informed decision.
And then speaking of the numbers, so I've got one here for you. Since VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Reporting System, was established, 684,000 adverse effects from vaccines have been reported since the 1980s. And what is even more staggering is less than 1% of reactions are even reported. So that's pretty good. Also, another interesting number. Now, you may have read articles saying that, oh my gosh, 80,000 people died in 2017, 2018 from the flu. Now, that was run in the AP News, and the fact of the matter is that the number is not accurate. It was an inflated figure which the CDC attained by combining the number of deaths caused by pneumonia, other respiratory illnesses, and sepsis, along with those caused by lab-confirmed type A or type B influenza. So, it's worth noting that these flu deaths was a completely inflated number, and again, statistics, can you really trust them? Also, the second clue has to do with the fact that deaths from influenza in persons over age 18 in the United States are not normally reportable or notifiable. So that's interesting. So what I do want to share some great health tips, despite all that bad news about the flu vaccine. So here's some news for you guys. What can you do to prevent the flu? Well, let's get back to nature and try some elderberry. It's amazing. I live in Kansas City, and we've got elderberry bushes all over the place. Beautiful, bright, kind of purplish berry, and you can make your own concoction. Just get the elderberry, smash it, make it into a liquid. Every health food store is filled, and even the grocery stores now have got this elderberry. It's been proven by scientists that these elderberries can fight the flu. So that's one, and it tastes pretty good. The second thing that I highly recommend to take over the winter months is echinacea. This is an herb specifically to be taken at the onset for about 7 days, and then take a break because it won't be as effective after the 7 days. Take a break, try it again after the 7 days. Another reason why a lot of people get sick in the winter months is a lack of vitamin D, because what do? We sit inside because it's so cold out. So I would recommend getting outside, getting some sunshine, and if you simply cannot, then supplement with some vitamin D. Also, vitamin C. Hey, we know how awesome that vitamin C is, so, get some powdered one, mix it in your drink, get chewable ones. They're everywhere. It's easy to take. The other really great health tip that I want to share with everybody is a homeopathic for the flu. It's called Silicocum. And I know that sounds like a really long name, and when people see it, they're like, what? What's that? Anyway, it will help with the flu. Again, homeopathy is based on like versus like. So when you take it, it will cause flu-like symptoms. So right in the beginning, after you take it, your symptoms might increase a little bit, but soon after, it completely cancels out, and you are better. The other tip that I would say for staying healthy and avoiding any kind of flu problem would be to keep your throat moist during the day by drinking hot liquids, your favorite tea, whatever it is. That's so none of those germs are going to settle in your throat. I also would recommend a throat spray. They have one called immunity shots, which Patrick and I, we love to take when we travel. It gets right there at the back of the throat. It's got some really good things in it, like apple cider vinegar, things like that. So I gave you about 6 tips if you want to avoid getting the flu.
We love having you with us, so please connect with us on Facebook at Spirits Journey Radio, and be sure to like our page so that we can be a part of your life. And you can study with us at intuitiveschool.com. We are Spirits Journey on Truth Frequency Radio. Bye for now.
See you next week.